I got the decals put back on the bike. I personally like it. Very hot today. So I think I'm going to run with the shield open. So hard drive crashes really suck. I was working from home on Friday. Logged into my computer like I always do if I end up working from home, and I had a message on the screen saying Windows detected a hard drive error to back up all my stuff. Now, for those of you that don't know, I'm in a business of pretty much an online retail business selling promotional products. My responsibility is the developer, make the websites, make the back-end systems, you know, for managing orders, taking care of, you know, customer orders, taking care of purchase orders, receipts, shipping notifications, all that. And when I got that error, I got pretty scared because I needed to make sure all my stuff was backed up. Now, we pretty much are a relatively successful business primarily because of automation. I've written a lot of code to do things automatically instead of having to create a purchase order manually. All you have to do is click a button, it'll pull everything in, and click another button and it'll send it off to the supplier. There are things like there's an incredible amount, thousands and thousands of lines of code. I would actually venture to say hundreds of thousands of lines of code that I've written over the years for the business, so I needed to make sure it was backed up. So I'm on the way to Fry's. I'm going to go get a solid-state hard drive. I'm tired of these standard hard drives failing on me. And I like the speed of a solid-state. The prices have come down pretty well, so I'm definitely looking forward to that. But realistically, I don't need a large hard drive, so a solid-state hard drive would be okay. But hard drive crashes suck. I'm also thinking of purchasing some HID lights for the Hayabusa this weekend. I've read a lot of reviews on it. People are saying it's a pretty good upgrade, not only for you to see at night, but also for you to be seen. It seems like between the different manufacturers, you have different colors based on, you know, what is actually white, where it starts to turn blue, where it starts to turn purple, and the price has actually come down quite a bit. I remember when I was first into motorcycles, I wanted to get an HID kit for my FZR 600, and it was like $1,200 for an HID kit back then. Obviously things have changed quite a bit, and now you're looking at about $35 for the two bulbs, two ballasts, and all the connectors. Which, $35 is pretty damn good. That's really no more expensive than an entire PIA kit that I used to buy back, 5-10 years ago. Actually, it was probably cheaper. And of course, you know, you have to deal with the bulbs and the delay system. Thinking about throwing together a little circuit, a little 555 timer. That's the electronics nerd coming out in me. That will delay the headlights to come on by a specified amount so that the ballasts don't trigger twice, try to ignite the lights twice. But they also sell those units. It's about 30 bucks. I'm a firm believer in if you can do it yourself, you might as well if it's cheaper. So what do you guys think? Do you think the 8,000 K, 8,000 Kelvin, 10,000, 6,000? Or if you had any opinions on the colors, I mean, you could go all the way to 30,000 Kelvin, which is a ridiculously purple. I actually saw those coming down the road, and I think the only advantage to that would be that it's such a strange color that it really stands out. I remember a truck coming up behind me a couple days ago had something similar. I don't know exactly what they were. Obviously, I didn't talk to the guy, but they were very, very pinkish, purplish. So I'm assuming it's greater than 20,000 in the color spectrum. And I could basically see him in my rear view mirror from a long distance away, which is kind of an advantage. Obviously, if you're on a motorcycle, you want to be seen. But of course, at night, there's nighttime driving, so possibly maybe do a the strange color on the high beam for daytime driving, because in Phoenix, you don't really get too many chances to turn on your high beam. And pretty much the only time that I have it, like right now, is during the day to be seen. So there is that option, or just go with like a pair of 8,000s and just kind of try to go with the white, which is the brightest. Now the downside to that is, being the brightest, there's a potential of getting pulled over. And we'll go into that, the next part of my vlog, which kind of ties into that, and that's concealed carrying while on a motorcycle. I know there are some opinions on it about how you cannot draw your weapon while on a motorcycle. There's really no point in having it. I personally disagree. If I was on my motorcycle, and a lot of people that say that don't conceal carry, that I've noticed, but in my opinion, if I'm on my motorcycle and I'm moving, I have the ability to get away, which is your number one goal. If you're concealed carrying, your number one goal is not to shoot somebody. And unfortunately, some people seem to think it is, that they need to go cowboy and, you know, draw their weapon on their motorcycle at 45 miles an hour. But even at a stop, I can get away a lot faster than a car is going to be able to keep up with me. Probably faster than I'd ever want to go, but that would be my number one concern. And in Arizona, they recently passed a law a few years ago where you can conceal carry without a permit. I myself am a permit-carrying citizen. I don't really believe that they should have passed that law, because there were certain things that prohibited people from getting a concealed carry permit, such as if they were ever convicted of domestic violence and a variety of different crimes. It nullified them from being able to get a concealed carry permit. Now, in Arizona, you can pretty much carry at any time except, of course, the places where you're not supposed to carry, such as places that serve alcohol, places that have it, designated that you're not supposed to carry weapons. But in Arizona, everyone can carry, so there's a lot more people now that do carry weapons, unfortunately. I will continue to renew my permit. But anyways, the point is that every time I'm pulled over by a police, there's kind of a debate. It's pretty polarized to whether you tell the police officer right away that you are carrying a weapon or you don't. Now, there are certain states that have a law where you are required to, such as, I believe, Alaska is one of them, where you are actually required to, first thing when you are approached by an officer, to tell them that you are carrying a weapon. Now, in Arizona, I'm pretty sure that's not the case. So there's this debate whether or not, it's your freedom to carry it without them knowing. While at the same time, I've seen plenty of videos on the web that show police with itchy trigger fingers, so I'd rather have a communication open from the beginning. And that kind of ties into the HID debate, whether if it's too bright, then it gets the police attention, I'll get pulled over more, and just that's more hassle for carrying a concealed weapon. Wondered if anyone out there had any opinions on it, because I'd certainly be interested in their experiences, whether how long they've gone, if they have been pulled over, ticketed, things like that. Because I'm pretty sure the law states that if your automobile or your vehicle has not come with that from the factory, that you are not allowed to modify it to have an HID light aftermarket. So, but I'd rather be seen, and I believe that's an equipment violation, not necessarily a moving violation. So I love motorcycle parking. To be continued. Alright, so continuing from earlier about the concealed carry on a motorcycle. There's a debate whether or not to put it in like a tank bag, because you were then able to pull it out on the bike, versus if it's on your body. And I think that's kind of, there's some pros and cons. Having it in a bag on your bike is great, probably a little more accessible than on your hip. But you are looking at, if you do happen to have a spill on your bike, you are no longer going to have your gun with you. If you're going to have a spill on your bike and your weapon is on your hip, yes, it may hurt if you land on it, but you're still going to have your weapon with you. And I personally ride with a Glock 26 on my hip and an inside the waistband holster, and I have no problems comfort-wise. It's perfectly, it's just perfectly comfortable. There's really no complaints about it. And realistically, all I have to do is pull up my shirt, and if I'm in an accident, hopefully my shirt being tucked in and having my jacket over it should keep the weapon in its holster. But the point is that you're going to have to get your glove off anyways, and you're going to have to get into a bag, so you're going to have to unzip the bag, or you're going to have to untuck your shirt. So it's kind of half dozen one, six the other. But I would much rather have my weapon on me, because there's also the possibility that I'm not on my motorcycle. That potentially, I could be at a stoplight and I need to let the bike go, or if I'm in a store, then I don't want to leave my weapon obviously in my tank bag. So I know there's been a lot of debates whether or not to get like an ankle holster. I personally didn't want to do that just for accessibility purposes. As well, there's a shoulder holster, which is okay, except for the fact that then you have to keep your jacket on, which in Phoenix is probably not a good idea, being that it's hotter than hell in your jacket. And it's only probably, I'd say, 80 degrees today, which is a beautiful day for March, but it's certainly warm, and warm enough that you don't want to go running around with your jacket on all the time. So being able to take your jacket off is certainly a big plus. You would have a little more accessibility if you did need to use your weapon, if you had it in a shoulder holster. But again, just like the tank bag, you would have to unzip your jacket in order to access the weapon. Whereas with inside the waistband, you basically just need to, you can pull up your arm, kind of hunch up your shoulder, and it lifts it up enough to where you have access to untuck your shirt and gain access to your weapon. But I was curious if any of you other guys out there, or gals, carry while on a motorcycle, whether it be a cruiser style or a sport bike, sport touring. Obviously the positions make a little bit of a difference. You can't have it an inside the waistband holster at like the 2 o'clock position, kind of an appendix carry if you will, on a sport bike being hunched over. But on a cruiser that's much more of an option. Mine, I like to keep more at kind of a 3 o'clock, maybe a 3 to 4 o'clock position. It's also just more accessible in general. Whereas an appendix carry, it's you got your if you're hunched over at all or anything, everything's kind of in the way. I find it to be very comfortable. It took a while before the leather would break in and kind of conform to your body. Until that happened, it was a bit of a foreign object kind of sitting on your side. And I was concerned about it riding a motorcycle, but with a jacket, I don't have to worry about printing. And I made sure my jacket was long enough to where it still covers my belt line when hunched over. If I'm really laying down on the tank, it's possible that it would be kind of exposing my waistband a little bit. However, I don't ride like that. Even on the freeway, if I'm hunched down a little bit, it's really not too bad. I've had my wife check while I've been riding to see if it shows at all, and it doesn't. So I'm pleased with that. It does scare me considering that a lot of other people out there now can carry firearms legally without going through a course. And that was my other point. I kind of touched on it earlier, where I do carry a permit. I did go through the course. It's an 8-hour course. You're required to be there for a full 8 hours. Not only to take a written test after your lecture discussion, where they talk about the legalities, the different calibers, caliber versus stopping power, if you will. They talk about how much time you have between, if a person's 20 feet away from you, how much time they can cover. And it's kind of surprising. You would think it would take a few seconds, but you're talking a fraction of a second to maybe just over 1 second to cover a distance of 15-20 feet. And if someone has a knife or some weapon that they're trying to use deadly force against you, you have very little time to react. So there's things like that. It's kind of an exercise in practicality, and I really don't see a problem with going through those courses. It's very educational. It lets you know the severity of what you're doing and what you're deciding to do by starting to carry a weapon concealed. And then it also requires you to demonstrate that you know how to shoot your weapon. And that's basically at certain distances. They need to make sure that you can hit a target within reasonable accuracy at certain distances. And it was surprising that more than one person out of our class of about 25 could not pass the first time. And that's scary, because you think of that person that doesn't know how to accurately aim and fire their weapon, potentially drawing it, thinking that they are in danger. And if they can't hit a target, what if there's somebody sitting, down on a bench nearby, or standing close by, or behind them? And if your accuracy is bad, well, then you could be charged with murder. So you've got some issues that I don't see taking an 8-hour course as bad, and I did not see a point in passing that law. I mean, I understand Arizona is it's the Wild West still. It's one of the last states that you can open carry, you can conceal carry, and now you can conceal carry without a permit. So there's really no reason to believe that this person over here doesn't have a gun and that person in front of me doesn't have a gun. So I think that's kind of a concept of self-policing. But I still believe education is a very important thing. At a minimum, taking that 8-hour course and learning what you can do, what you can't do, and learn about what the severity of what you are deciding to do. So my advice to anybody that is considering to do concealed carry, whether it be on a motorcycle or not, I think that you should definitely take the course. If not more, you should take your gun to the gun range, make sure you know how to use it, make sure it's comfortable to shoot. I mean, you can work on something like a 10mm Glock, and that damn thing is a hand cannon. While only 1 more millimeter in diameter than a 9mm like my Glock 26, the actual firing power is incredible compared to it. The shell casing size is much bigger than a standard 9mm, so it travels faster and has much more stopping power and penetrating power than a 9mm does. However, the thing is a hand cannon. Very uncomfortable to shoot, especially in a subcompact frame. In a subcompact frame, your pinky is usually not seated on the handle of the gun. There are some ammunition clips, magazines, whatever you want to call them, that have an extension that allows your pinky to rest on the handle, but I wanted the small size. It also, I think, gains you 1 or 2 rounds. But in my particular preference, I wanted not only the comfort, because you're carrying this hunk of metal on your hip, I also didn't want to worry about printing as much. And you can get the subcompact frames with the Glock 10mm, and to fire it with only 2 fingers on the handle is pretty rough. So you definitely have to make sure. And unfortunately, I'm winding up, about ready to roll in the house here, so I'm going to call it a day. Leave some comments. Let me know what you think. Let me know what your opinions are. And I'd like to hear from it.